I've got Brent Bailey with me today, editor of HarnQuest. We're talking Q1 2025, as well as the HarnQuest Kickstarter. Brent, welcome back.
Hello. Thanks for having me
Um,
again.
yeah, absolutely. The door is always open. Um, well, let's talk about the two big articles that are present in this one. We've got Tormau and Ithiko, both set in Rethem, and we've also got two new map regions that are coming in this. Want to give us just the broad strokes overview?
Sure. Uh, so Tormau Castle, the article was originally published in 1985 as part of the Rethem Kingdom module. And a couple of years later, Columbia Games put out a volume of castles from a bunch of different places called Castles of Harn. And Ithaco was originally published that way in 1987. And both of these, so that's, almost, it's 20 years ago and 18 years ago. So both of these articles have been available on and off at various times, but they have been reliably available for the last decade or so. But it's been basically just a reprint of the original. And we've been slowly kind of going back and pulling some of these older ones that have not yet been fleshed out, not been revised, not been updated, and doing that. And so this HarnQuest is to bring these two bits of the Kingdom of Rethem to the forefront and make them kind of at the same level as the recent Kingdom module and Golotha, and even in the last HarnQuest we had High End Keep and a couple of Agrican orders. So this isn't a full theme that's going to continue for reliably or regularly. We do have more stuff to do with Rethem, but these two will be the ones we're now. But as we do with anytime we go back and get one of these older articles, it's not just prettying it up and reprinting it. It is all brand new art, most of it in color. The floor plans are all converted to the color standard that we've been using now for the last decade or so. But the content is not just the same content. It is at least double what we used to do or close to that. There's a lot of new content that it doesn't invalidate the old content, but it clarifies, it fleshes out, it adds a lot more detail. So as one good example in Tormau, which the Earl of Tormau is kind of the arch enemy of the King of Rethem. So his family they've had the earldom for generations, but the current Earl has not sworn fealty to the king, has not paid taxes to the king, basically feels the king is a usurper for who usurp the crown in favor of or to the detriment of the Earl's niece or nephew. So there's a family angle to that. There's kingdom politics to that. There's religious politics going on. The usual things that you can find in these Harn settlement articles. It's all there in Tormau. But one of the aspects of Tormau is that the Earl has been assembling, knowing that conflict with the king is inevitable. It's gonna happen. So over the last few years, he has been building up a mercenary army in preparation for whatever comes down from the king. And that army includes ex-royal guards. It includes Kuboran tribesmen. It includes Ivinian Orbelese Viking warriors, and just general scum of the earth mercenaries. He's got this assemblage of military forces. He's got ships. He's building this army and navy in preparation for that. And in the original version of Tormau, that was basically a couple of lines of text saying he's assembling this army. Well, in this one, we devote a couple of pages to that. We really explain the different units. We highlight important personages, like the leaders of some of the units, and really flesh that out so that with the idea that a GM who's going to role play something around this conflict with the king, or just in the lead up to that, has a lot more of information already at hand here that they don't now have to come up with.
Right, right. Yeah, and the thing I love about these two articles as a pair is you almost get a campaign in a box
Yes.
just from these 32 pages. I thought that was so much fun. With whether or not you want your players to be part of a mercenary company, this is a good way of inserting them. They can just plop into there. If you want to set a campaign in Rethem, Tormau is a great setting because commerce is happening. You
Mhm.
got this conflict, um, and it pairs perfectly with Ithiko. Um,
Yes.
that
Yeah, that's a good lead there, that even though we know the eventual conflict is with King Chafin, who's based at Shostam, which is another article. Uh, Ithaco is pretty close to Tormau, and uh, the Earl sees Ithaco as the first tree to be felled. That he knows that is what that's going to be a precursor to whatever goes on with Chafin. In fact, just a couple of years ago, Tormau just took one of the Earl of Ithaco's castles, just went in, took it, and now it's one of his. So there's this personal, almost honor type aspect where the Earl of Ithaco absolutely hates Tormund. And so you've got there's he's even got, there's just a lot of different things that tie these two together. There's economic pressure, there's the military pressure, there's personal familial pressures. There's a lot of stuff going on here. And if you were to start a Rethem based campaign, these two here would be a really good way to start that. And then depending on where that goes, then move down the coast a bit to to Shostam and to Golotha, and on like that.
there's also really good hooks in here to bring in the conflict with Candide, the
Yeah.
Loranians.
Yes.
Religion is a huge part of these two articles. Um, what would you say? When you correct me if I'm wrong, but you're one of the lead writers on was it Tormau for the rewrites?
Yes. For both of them.
Oh, for both of them. Okay, fantastic. And let's drop some credit for the folks that did some of the original articles here. We had Edwin King, Richard Porter, and then yourself and Mark Reniff on Tormau. And where did I put
Matt
Ithaco? Here we go. We
Matt
got
Regner.
Matt Regner, Edwin King, Richard Porter, and yourself on Ithaco.
Yeah.
Um, you know, as you're writing these two sides and reading through them, do you find yourself sympathizing with any
Oh
of the
yeah.
particular parties?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and I have to, when I'm doing these, when I'm writing these, I have to somewhat divorce myself from it, because one of my early, so going back almost 40 years ago now, one of my early campaigns that I ran in did involve Tormau. Actually, didn't really ever include Ithaco, but it did involve Tormau, and so the Earl of Tormau has been someone who lived in my head for the last 40 years. And so clearly I have a bit of a bias here. Um, but that's, when we're writing these things, it's not, oh, we're stacking the deck too obviously, or we're not, we have to make sure that there's a lot of options, a lot of possibilities. One thing we did with his went and so on Tormau, Mark Reniff is the one who wrote the military information.
Hmm.
So he provided all the information about the various army units. And one of the things we went into that with was that um, there has to be a lot of conflict potential between these groups. I mean, it's not a unified army that is firmly under the control of one person. that these are mercenaries. They're fighting for coin, or they're fighting for glory, or they're fighting for land or whatever, but they're going to have conflicts within the ranks, some within their own ranks. Like we mentioned in here that the Kuboran tribesmen, and there's a couple hundred, I think, 100 and no, I don't remember how many there are, but they're not all from one tribe. They're from multiple tribes. They went recruiting, and so it's handfuls of warriors from a number of different tribes. Well, the Kubora fight amongst themselves all the time. So you get those little groups from various bands now, and they're all kind of camped next to each other here outside of Tormau. That doesn't go away. They're not brothers in arms. They're still that rival tribe from across the river. So you're going to have some potential conflict within the Kubora, between the Kubora and the ex royal guards, or the Viking, the Ivinian or Belize. So all these different units have their own motives. They have their own biases, and they have their own history. So there's a lot of conflict just within the ranks of the army, even before you start pitting them against Ithiko's forces, or the king's forces, or any of the other threats that are around Tormau.
Yeah, it's one of the easy ins if you have a group of players that really know the setting and they're like, well, I really want to play someone for more ball, and someone else is like, oh, I want to play, one of these tribesmen or something,
Right.
and I want to put that book to work, and this is a great location as a GM to set that sort of campaign. Or, to your point about all the military aspects, if you want to run a game that's, the Harnick Black Company, or, something like Malazan Book of the Fallen, you've got all the tools you need for it right here. We also get a nice mention of a navy, not the world's best maintained navy, but it's one of the few things I can think of that has come out in recent memory, with you know boats and the navy. So if you wanted to, run something that's more nautical, um, this is also a great place to pick that up. Run some pirate activity or something.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and that's the thing that, when you say Navy, these are not, by and large warships. These are
no.
confiscated fishing boats, confiscated trading ships, that kind of stuff that pirates were using. Or some of these people, I think, were not really even pirates. They're just, oh, those guys look, they've got a boat, they look suspicious, we're taking it. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of heavy-handed confiscation, I think, that took place here.
Yeah, they become Q ships at best, I think, is what it comes down to. Just like merchants that are disguised.
Right.
Uh, um, yeah, I also want to shout out Richard with those new illustrations.
Yep.
I'll put some up on the screen here.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I thought Tormau was fantastic. I mean, this is kind of like the inverse Candé, right? Like, or not Candé, but Caldor. Because, Caldor, you have the succession crisis. Over here in Tormau, you have the opportunity to create a succession crisis and take down the king if you want to side with this side. Um, it's it's some fun stuff. Kind of flipping that script. If we run down to Ithiko,
Mhm.
we have some loyalists.
Yes. Yeah. The Earl of Ithaco has long been a supporter of the crown. His family has been supporters of the crown. So, which of course is probably what put him firmly in Tormau's, view, that put him in his targets. Um, so, but even though the Earl himself is a loyalist to the crown, there's, I mentioned earlier, some family drama going on that
Mhm.
uh, the Earl's daughter-in-law is related to Tormau's family through marriage, and there's a lot of interconnectedness among the great clans in Rethem, and they're were some suspicions of um, collusion or intrigue. That, of course, roped in the Earl's eldest son because it was his wife. And so now he's essentially been jailed and kind of disinherited. And so there's a lot of things going on there, a lot of family drama going on at Ithaco. But Ithaco is also uh, kind of the antithesis of Tormau in other ways, in that um, where Tormau is a very bustling economic center, Ithaco is kind of drying up. That, literally, in that the harbor has been silting up over the decades and is now to the point where no ships get really anywhere near Ithaco. And so all the commerce has kind of shifted away. Um, and so it's not the most healthy settlement, but the Earl's struggling. He knows he's got Tormau. He's trying to be loyal to the king. So he's hiring mercenaries and building his own force. But at the same time, and this is one, I think the coolest aspect to me of Ithaco is that Ithaco was the birthplace of the prophet Balsha, who was a Morgathian prophet, and probably the most important religious figure in Harnick history, because Balsha's death, no spoiler there, this all happened, 70 years ago, 60 years ago, that Balsha was martyred, was executed, became a martyr, and it sparked a rebellion that brought down the Korani Empire, which essentially ruled most of Western Harn. And that fell, and it kicked off like decades of petty kingdoms and theocracies and the barbarian invasions. So a lot of the political nature of, or the political situation in Western Harn, really all traces back to Balsha and his teachings and his death and what came after. And his birthplace is in Ithaco. And so the temple there has this big shrine to Balsha, and it draws pilgrims and all this kind of and all that. Um, but the cool thing about that is that Morgathian religion is a definite minority religion on Harn. It is one of the stereotypical, chaotic evil. That is what, if you were to try to align it to the alignment chart, that's pretty much where it goes. Not a lot of followers outside of very concentrated pockets.
Mhm.
And so there's all sorts of, creepy, weird, evil things that you can do with the temple and the followers and all that. And so it brings a really weird angle to whatever you want to do in Ithaco. And this article, in addition to the 12 pages we have about the town of Ithaco and the castle and all that, there's a 4-page supplement at the end that details that Morgathian temple and shrine and some of the people who reside there.
Yeah,
So
some
with,
wonderful
with
art from
really
Richard.
cool hooks. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we got this great, I don't know if it's quite Gothic church looking thing here,
I
which I'll,
think one of my favorite Richard Luschek illustrations ever is that one. And a couple of other people have said that this is, massive. This is a great, great illustration.
yeah, and it's the small details in it, like these guys who, I think they're chumming the water here.
Well, the article mentions that one of the things that, if you're an acolyte in the Morgathian temple, one of the things you do is cleaning up after rituals. And when your rituals involve torture and dismemberment and whatever else, cleanup's not going to be a good job. And so,
No.
yeah, for Richard to kind of include some of that in this illustration, um, was really like you said, it's the little details that do wonders, and this is a really good example of that.
Yeah, I also like the personalities that you put in here because it helps bring it to life, right? Like it's easy to look at some of these like the religion of death and
Yeah.
make it very one-sided. But what does it actually look like to be a member of that or to be in the clerical order? A lot of paranoia, it turns out.
Oh yeah.
Who would have seen that coming? Um, but yeah, there's a great tool set here in terms of characters to support bringing this to life, which I really appreciated. Um, yeah, we're kind of jumping all over the map here. Uh, was there anything else on either of these articles that you wanted to put out there, or did we pretty much hit all the elements that you wanted?
I think we hit all the elements that it's, like I said, we just kind of tried to add detail to make this easier for people to pick up and just use. And, I think that's a really good kind of lead into one special thing that's going on now with this HarnQuest release is that Columbia Games is running a Kickstarter to try to get new HarnQuest subscribers. Now, the HarnQuest subscription program has been running for many years now. Um, but then over the last however many years, Columbia has been putting out the hardback editions of the Kingdom modules. What they have noticed is that the Venn diagram of people who are buying the hardback Kingdoms and people who are HarnQuest subscribers is not nearly as much of an overlap as one would think.
Hmm.
There are a lot of people who have been buying the books that are not subscribing to HarnQuest, and they're not getting more of the individual settlement articles and that sort of thing. So what Columbia Games is trying to do here with this Kickstarter is raise awareness, essentially, with that Kickstarter crowd to say, hey, if you like the books that you've been buying from us, you might be interested in subscribing to our quarterly schedule, our quarterly releases of brand new material. And so that's what they're doing here. This is not doesn't replace the current subscription program. If someone's already subscribing, it's not affected at all by the Kickstarter. It's just this is a way to try to attract new people who are not subscribers by essentially giving them a discount on, hey, pay up front for a year, you'll get 4 releases at a slightly lower rate than the standard rate. But that's the idea, being that after they've done those 4, hopefully they've enjoyed what they've been reading, and they continue their subscription after that.
Yeah, and there's also some good add-ons in there. I know they had the big vinyl maps at a discount again, and a few other hardback books that you could grab if you haven't picked those up yet. So it's a good entry point if you're not a HarnQuest subscriber. Um, but yeah, as someone who came in through Kickstarter, and I think it was the second Kickstarter that caught my eye, and that was after I had seen videos years ago from like Ardwolf or Complex Game Apologist or something like that. And I was like, oh yeah, yeah, I'll check this out. It does work, right? I mean, there's a reason Kickstarter is popular.
Right.
Um, so
Yeah, it's a channel that doesn't necessarily go to the Harn forum, or doesn't read other things, or isn't where other Harn people are. But at this point, if you've seen those Kickstarter campaigns, you've bought some of the hardback books, we assume you're interested in this. And HarnQuest is the way to get that new material as it comes out on a regular basis. We have been doing quarterly releases for HarnQuest for, I believe, the last 13 years. Couple times there's been 3 in a year, not 4, because the third one of them was twice as big or something like that. But it's been pretty darn reliable.
Yeah, and you've got big projects right now. You've got
Yeah.
Evail,
Yeah.
which I think Carrie is lead on.
Carrie is the primary on Eval, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be an exciting one. And then anything else coming down the pike that we should shout out or
I mean,
just leave it there?
that's the big one. That one's going to be, and that's kind of a thing with, it's being run alongside the HarnQuest program.
Hmm.
So HarnQuest is going to be the quarterly releases. Meanwhile, we're also getting all of this Avail stuff ready, and then that'll be released first as a book, as the hardback book. It's not going to be dribs and drabs through HarnQuest first. It'll be, you want it all, here's the book. Now, people will be able to buy the individual pieces if they want to, later and all. I don't believe that those will run through HarnQuest at all, but that'll be up to Columbia Games to decide how they want to do that. But yeah, that's the big project. But I'd say we're at best, it'll be the end of this year.
Yeah.
There's just it's a year's worth of material. So,
Yeah, and it's I think Carrie had mentioned it previously that like the original Evail that you're building off of was very, very small
oh, very,
compared to everything else. So it's going to be mostly new content. So
yeah.
that's
Yeah, I think this one, it's not just at least as much. This one, I believe, is closer to 3 times as much new material as old material.
that's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, busy days ahead on the editing front, Ben.
Yes.
Um, well, thanks for joining me. Oh, actually, we forgot to shout out our map making friends.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Sure.
what are the two maps that are included in this edition?
So they are F4 and F5, which are in the Equeth Wilderness and Rayesha Mountains area. So kind of in the middle and up a little bit. The reason those were selected was that uh, Columbia did a Kickstarter a couple months back for the second volume in the or the second novella by Alexander Maxwell Drake, the Maxwell Alexander Drake. Sorry, he goes by Drake, so I forget the first name sometimes. But so Drake's written a second volume. There was the Carnage of Kiraz, and now this one is the Slaughter at Syrian, and it takes it takes place in those two squares. So one of those squares, F4, includes where Kiraz is at the foot in the foothills of the Rayesha Mountains in the Equeth Wilderness, and then Syrian and therefore the battle site and all that take place in F5 on the shores of Lake Benath, south of the Rayesha Mountains and stuff. So those two were part of that Kickstarter. So if you subscribe to, or if you backed that one, you're going to get the book and you're going to get these two maps to kind of show where it is. So we needed to get those maps ready. So with this HarnQuest that Columbia Games knows, if you're a HarnQuest subscriber and you backed the book, you're not going to get charged for the two maps twice. You've already paid for them as part of the book, so you'll get those maps, but you won't be charged. You'll get your HarnQuest at a discount rate this time.
Perfect. Yeah. Um, awesome. Well, we're looking forward to it. Do you know when the uh, HarnQuest package drops for current subscribers?
The idea is that the PDFs will be released by the end of this month. So
Okay.
today's the 10th. So within the next couple of weeks, the next 3 weeks, the PDFs will be released then. And then we'll kind of take a few week gap there before the print is done. We did this we started this either last time or the time before that, where by putting the PDFs out there, getting them into people's hands, if they spot something that we, myself as editor, the team as reviewers, Grant as editor, if we miss something and someone finds it, we can correct it before it goes to print. there were a few things the last time with a couple points on the map or something like that, that there were a couple of little things that got caught. So it's it's a good policy, I think, for a good practice for us to do to kind of put that out there, put the PDFs and people can look through it.
Yeah, I see more and more companies doing that. And yeah, I mean, it works. So perfect.
Yeah,
All right. Well, hey, Brent, thanks for joining us. Hopefully we'll be chatting in another couple months here about the next one.
whatever's next. Yeah,
Yeah, best of luck to Columbia Games on the Kickstarter, and we'll see you next time.
great. Thanks a lot.